Welcome back to video 5 in this marathon series. At this point, we've discussed what race you're going to choose, the training plan that's going to get you there, all the gear that you need, fueling and hydration, what that should look like, as well as training intentionally and how that's going to give you your strongest race ahead. Honestly, it all sounds really exciting, right? It's really empowering to feel like you have everything in place before your training even begins. But what happens when the excitement of the newness wears off? This is really common in marathon training, pretty much happens to most people where that excitement wanes and then it starts getting real. So that's what we're talking about in this video today, just those roadblocks that are really common in marathon training and the solutions to overcome them when they do happen to you. All right, so the first one is overcoming poor time management. So, the issue here that a lot of people have is that they've got their plan in place for marathon training, but then day one happens and they don't really have a plan going forward of when they're going to get these runs completed. And it starts to unravel pretty quickly if you haven't done the appropriate measures to make sure that you have the time to get these runs in. Suddenly, you're noticing it's 9 p.m., you're exhausted at that point in time, and the run's not getting accomplished. And you wake up the next morning, rinse and repeat, and before you know it, you've gone through all of these days with barely getting any of your runs in. Unfortunately, I see it happen way too often. So, what's the solution here? It's pretty simple, and that is time blocking. So, exactly the same way that you would go about doing this for work, you have time blocked off to do certain things in your job, you have time blocked off to have certain phone calls, right? And so you wouldn't miss any of those particular meetings that you have. And so if you're scheduling runs in the same way, you wouldn't miss a meeting, you're not going to miss a run. So if that has to be at 5 a.m. before your day starts, then that's when it has to be done. If you're someone that you know you can do well running after work, that's fine too. But you're leaving that time closed just for you. And yes, this is about making your training a priority. This may mean that what you normally do has to change a bit as you embark on this endeavor because you cannot do it all. So it's really coming down to the most important things in your life coming first, like your family and your job, and then marathon training, right? Like if you want to have a really good race, you have to make this a priority. I scheduled this time in my day to get my run done, and that's what I'm going to do. So the next roadblock we're talking about overcoming, that is lack of motivation. So what's really important to understand is that even the best athletes in the world aren't motivated every day. You can love running and still wake up and not be motivated to get that particular run done. It's still something on your schedule that you have to do. And so sometimes that can demotivate it for you when you know that you have to do it versus maybe with the running in your past now you actually have to follow a schedule, and that can make it harder to stay motivated at times or when the mileage is getting a lot higher. So the solution is that you are putting discipline over motivation. You have to have a no excuses attitude that it's getting done no matter what. And when you time block, like we talked about before, that makes it easier. But obviously, something could happen in your day that ruins that time block. And even then, when that happens, that's still not an excuse for you to not get it done. In most situations, there's probably a way. And that's where that discipline comes in. You are staying true to what you said you were going to do. Now, one very specific solution that can help with this is just worrying about the one next run on your schedule. When you start looking at everything that's ahead of you, everything for the week, everything for the entire plan, it starts to get really overwhelming. If you start thinking of it as just one run in all of these other runs, it seems like not that big of a deal for you to miss it. But then that's a slippery slope, and then you end up missing way more than just that one run. So right now, you're just staying disciplined to what that one thing is on your calendar right now. You check it off and you move on to the next one. And before you know it, you're so disciplined in your routine and in your schedule that it becomes second nature, and you can't imagine doing anything but following your schedule. It takes the decision making completely out of it. There is no choice of should I or shouldn't I. You just know you're doing it no matter what. So, the next roadblock we're talking about overcoming is missed days, which is due to something like illness. So, even the most disciplined individuals do have to miss some runs here or there. So, then what do you do when you miss those runs? It can be really concerning for people, really frustrating. And so, this is why I like to encourage people to pick an 18 to 20 week marathon training plan, not less than that. So, it's already really building in a couple of extra weeks, assuming that something could happen where you do have to miss a few days. Life's not perfect. We know that people get sick. We know that a minor injury could be sustained where you need to take a couple of days off, or that you need to fly somewhere to be with your family and you're not going to be able to get that run in. And that's just a reality. If it's something that's less than a week, you've missed less than a week of training, then it's okay to just pick up on the training right where you're supposed to for that following week. You don't need to just completely amend things because you're not detrained in any way, you haven't lost fitness or anything like that. So it's okay to move on. Now, if we start getting into longer than a week, if we're 2 weeks or more, that's where we have to be careful about adjusting the training, because you are starting to lose fitness at that time. Maybe you missed a couple of really big long runs, and we don't want to be overtraining you, giving you too much too soon, more than what your body is ready for at that point in time. This is where I've had 1 hour consult calls with people who've been in this situation where we've actually amended their training. I just had one a couple weeks ago, so that they could get back on track in the right way, adjusting their schedule so that they could feel confident moving forward. If it's due to an injury lasting for more than a few runs, I would encourage you to see a medical professional sooner rather than later. And then an important reminder here is to make sure that you're not missing runs due to poor excuses. Just having a backup plan for those situations is really important. I'm a very strong proponent of where there's a will, there's a way. I've worked with enough people to know that the people who are really committed to their training will figure out a way to get in the majority of their runs. The next hurdle that a lot of people experience is that normal fatigue and draining feeling that comes from marathon training. It's a very real aspect of embarking on this journey. And a lot of times people don't realize that it is a normal part, but sometimes it's actually more than it should be. And so trying to pinpoint what's normal versus abnormal, that can sometimes be challenging. So, normal fatigue, I would just chalk up to the excitement has worn off. You wake up and it's, yep, I gotta run again. I gotta run again. It just feels kind of monotonous. You're in this everyday grind, and the marathon still feels like it's really far away. It's that tough middle part, and it's common to just feel kind of overwhelmed by the training. And that's, again, going back to just taking it day by day. That's the best thing that you can do, and reminding yourself of your why. Why did you want to do this in the first place? Why is it important to you? And when you get up in the morning and you've got to get out of bed early, rise and grind, like, this is going to be worth it. I'm doing this for a reason, and I know that it will pay off in the end. Now, as far as having an understanding if it's too much, if you're feeling burnt out, you're feeling like an extreme lack of motivation, you're just feeling it in your bones, like there's probably something more going on there that you need to address. And so this is where you really want to hone in. Are you recovering properly? Are you sleeping enough? I mean, you're doing way more training than you've probably ever done. So your sleep needs to match that, especially the older you are, the more so that it's going to have an effect on you. Are you fueling as a marathon runner? Or are you fueling the way that you used to fuel when you weren't running very much? It obviously needs to look different. And that's a huge piece of recovery as well. Are you hydrating every day? Are you getting in the electrolytes that you need? Are you giving just adequate rest time overall? Are you running easy enough, slow enough? Because if you're running all of your runs too hard, then the fatigue is going to get really overwhelming. So those are some of the things that you can look at if you feel like it's getting to be too much. And that's the physical fatigue part, but there's also the mental fatigue part. So one solution I would offer you is just making sure that you have a community around you of people who are going through the same thing that you are, or at least one other person that you can talk to about this, because a lot of times we are just doing this on our own and we actually don't have anyone in our lives who understands how hard it is. And so having someone in your corner can be super helpful for just feeling understood and having that person that's really cheering you on to say, keep going. You're going to love that you did this in the end. And the last one is failing a prescribed run on your schedule. And I use failing in air quotes because I don't think of these bad runs that we all have as failures, but instead as learning opportunities. Maybe it's the former teacher in me, but that reflection is so important for improving and getting better. And that's really what a failure is. We all have those. We all have those things in our lives where we don't win, we don't get what we want, it doesn't go perfectly right, but that doesn't mean that that's just where we stay. We don't stay stuck. You obviously think about what you can improve upon so you can do it better next time. So in my mind as a coach, it's only a failed run if you don't do anything differently for next time. Because if you just do the same thing over and over again and you don't change anything, you are going to continue to have a bad run. And unfortunately, I do see people do that because maybe they just don't realize, they don't know what they did wrong. So they just chalk it up to, I just had a bad day. They go about the next one and they never take the time to sit there and look at, what do I think went wrong so that I can fix this? So, just to give you a few things of why you had maybe a bad run, a couple examples of what I mean by bad run is like you have some pace work and you're not able to hit any of the pace work in that run or very little of it, or you just feel really, really crappy, or in a long run, it starts out great and by the end, you're just really fatigued, tired, and you're finishing way slower than you started, and it's supposed to be an easy run and it feels anything but. So the biggest things to look at here are you fueling it properly? Are you eating breakfast? Are you taking gels during that long run? That's an often a common reason for why things aren't going well. Are you staying hydrated, especially if it's warmer? Like, has the weather changed and it's hotter? That could be a reason. And then is your hydration matching that higher temperature as well? And then one of the biggest things is people think that they're running easy, they think they're running slow, and they're not running nearly as slow as they should be. And so, one indicator I like to give is if you're slowing way down on your easy long runs, whatever pace that is that you're finishing at, flip it and start at that slower pace next time so that you can finish at that faster pace. It's just going to give you a lot more confidence going forward. So if you do it right, guys, marathon training is just tough. Like, that's the truth of the matter. And it's never going to feel easy if you're doing it right. But when you make a commitment to yourself in this process, I cannot tell you how good it feels to step on that start line, knowing you overcame all of the challenges and hardship to have the best day possible, knowing that you're prepared for whatever comes your way. So in the upcoming and final video in this series, I'll be covering race day execution, where we're bringing all of that training together. Really important that you take time to think about pacing for race day, fueling, hydrating, what you're wearing, everything that you're going to need to have a successful race, and put it all together. That's what we'll be touching on. So thanks for joining me in this one, and I hope to catch you in that next one.